discuss about diaspora literature today. Actually, the term diaspora, originally used for the Jews' dispersal from their homeland, is now applied as a metaphoric designation for all expatriates, refugees, exiles, immigrants whose language experience have been altered by the paradigm of bilingualism, biculturalism, and geographical dislocation. The Indian diaspora is one of the most important demographic dislocation of modern times and is increasingly becoming the representative of a significant force in global culture. It is perceived to belong to two distinct phases, and these are for convenience labeled settler and visitor diaspora by Makarand Paranjape, akin to settler and invader colonialists as identified by Maxwell. The first category, propelled by colonial agency, comprises forced migration effected by slavery, indentured labor, or cataclysmic political devastation such as partition. The second and more recent category comprises voluntary migration of professionals, academics, artists, musicians, business persons, and allied fortune seekers. In this connection, a critic, Sudesh Mishra, has rightly observed that there is a distinction to be made between the old and the new diasporas. This distinction is between, on the one hand, the semi voluntary fight of indentured peasants to the non metropolitan plantation colonies such as Fiji, Trinidad, Mauritius, South Africa, Malaysia, Suriname, and Guyana, roughly between the years 1830 and 1917, and on the other, the late capital or postmodern dispersal of new migrants of all classes to thriving metropolitan centers such as Australia, the United States, Canada, and Britain. Diaspora writers are deeply attached to their centrifugal homeland, yet yearn to belong to their current abode. They are caught physically between two worlds, and this double marginalization by both their host culture and their root culture negates their belonging to either location. This condition of being unhomed is associated further with alienation, a desire to reclaim the past, the inability to move out, and the urge to show solidarity to the homeland. The diasporic consciousness foregrounds the feelings of alienation, dispersal, longing for homeland, a double identification with the original homeland and the adopted country, crisis of identity, mythic memory, and protest against discrimination in the adopted country. So, between longing and belonging, there is an autonomous space reserved for the articulation of that consciousness. Non diaspora writers cannot fill up this space. If V.S. Napel is the founding father of the old diaspora, as Vijay Mishra views him in the diasporic imaginary, Salman Rushdie would be the representative of the new one. Now we talk about new diaspora. For new diaspora, Sudesh Mishra uses the term masala diaspora because people go to the West for higher education, better career opportunities, and higher pay package. For such immigrants, diaspora is an outcome of late modernity and global crossing of boundaries. For them, it is an emancipatory condition. But those who have settled there realize that it is not only for them to adopt the host country but also for the host country to adopt them. The countries to which Indians have migrated officially follow the policy of multiculturalism or salad ball. But a close study of Indian diaspora novels shows that Indians are subjected to racial discrimination, exploitation, marginalization, and sufferings. They are faced with an acute sense of identity. There is no doubt that all diasporic writers share the trauma of displacement as a common history, whether firsthand or through their parents' experience. Those who pull their roots have a tendency of nostalgia towards the culture of their ancestral land, which takes on an idealized shape in their minds. Though diasporans generally may not want to return home, there is a conscious or subconscious attachment to its traditions and customs. Parallel to this runs a strong need to belong, to feel wanted by the adopted cultures. So, in this connection, Victor J. Ramraj has rightly observed that diasporic writings are invariably concerned with the individual's or community's attachment to the centrifugal homeland. But this attachment is countered by a yearning for a sense of belonging to the current place of abode. Caught physically between two worlds, diasporans are in the process of moving from one culture state of existence to another. Actually, Indian diasporic writers produced novels based on their lived experiences. Despite being in the West, they cannot disown their national identity, their racial identity, and the color of their skin. In the adopted country, be it England, America, Canada, or Australia, Indian immigrants face daily plight, violence, abuse, humiliation, and are racially discriminated. And their homing desire is thwarted. So, there are many numerous diasporic novels written on this aspect. In this connection, we may mention Anita Desai's Bye Bye Blackbird, Bharti Mukherjee's Jasmine and Desirable Daughters, Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni's The Mistress of Spices, The Sister of My Heart, The Wine of Desire, Kamla Markandeya's The Nowhere Man, Hari Kunzru's Transmission, Bowman Desai's Asylum USA. It was Kamla Markandeya who, for the first time, took up this theme in her novel The Nowhere Man and showed how Srinivas, who chose to settle in England and adopted the host country but was not allowed to do so by Fred Fletcher. This novel contains such characters like Srinivas, his wife Vasantha, his son Lakshman, Mrs. Pickering, and Fred Fletcher. These characters have kept on surfacing in different diasporic novels under different names. In Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni's The Mistress of Spices, uh, this novel has many Indian immigrants who report their problems to the so-called Mistress of Spices Tilo. In Hari Kunzru's novel Transmission, the homing desire of Arjun is thwarted by the milieu of the host country America. Similar is the case with the protagonist of the Bowman Desai's Asylum USA, who is forced to marry a lesbian for the sake of remaining in America. So, in this way, these novels explode the myth that every immigrant is welcome in England and America, in the so called multicultural ethos of Western countries. So, I conclude my point with the lines of Dan McGifford that South Asians in Canada usually find that the cold, forbidding Canadian climate is outmatched by the icy, hostile social environment where they feel themselves doubly marginalized. First, because they are immigrants, and second, because they belong to racial, often linguistic, and usually religious minorities. Mainstream Canadian may be openly antagonistic, judging South Asians as simply too different, simply the wrong kind of immigrant, or the racism and bigotry may be more subtle. Whatever the face of intolerance, the effects are comparable, and nobody should be shocked that the alienation of the immigrant and the bitter stings of racism and religious bigotry, painful daily realities for South Asian Canadian writers, are important factors in shaping their lives, politics, and art. Thank you. Thank you so much.